Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are playing as Greenskins against the Wood Elves on the map Lost Crater. And for this match, I wanted to try out something that's a little bit broken. And that is Vindictive Glare. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, Vindictive Glare is the magic missile spell for the Little Wa. And this spell is currently, shall we say, a bit overperforming. It's got a bonus versus large. It's one of the only, if not the only, magic missile that gets bonus versus large. It's incredibly accurate after the accuracy buffs, and it's incredibly cheap. Overcast, it only costs 8 winds of magic. Standard cast, it only costs 4. And you can bring Night Goblin Shamans with this for 200 for less than 300 gold, like 256 I think. With the Wand of Jet here, we're looking at like a little over 300, and it is an absolute beast at killing lightly armored flyers. So things such as eagles, things like Pegasus Knights, or well, not Pegasus Knights necessarily, but lords or heroes mounted on Pegasuses, like casters basically, casters mounted on horses, and that sort of stuff. They're really potent. But I also wanted to try out how well Vindictive Glare would also do against things such as monsters. And incidentally, my opponent here did bring an Ancient Tree Man, so perhaps we will get to test out how Vindictive Glare does against those. Now, for those to build well, it's a lot of casting. We do have Wardsag, so we've got 3 casters in this match. Wardsag does have the Bone with Staff. He's got Squiggly Beast, of course, Wardsag's Revenge, Warpaint of Wardsag, Power of the Wa, Here We Go, Fist of Gork, Get Back Here, Wa, and Effigy of the Git. So we got a snare on top of doubled up Vindictive Glare, and then one of our Night Goblin Shamans is more heavily equipped. He does also have Sneaky Stabbing, Inchy Nuisance, and Gork'll Fix It, and of course both do have the Wand of Jet to get us a little bit more winds of magic. Our front line is by necessity cheap because we've invested a lot in supporting elements. So we've got a front line composed entirely of Orc Boys, except for this lone unit of AP Cloonies. They are unbreakable, and they should hold rather well. In the back there, we do have Rusty Airs as a single sort of shooting unit. They're not going to do amazing damage, but they can sunder armor, and that will synergize very nicely with these two Doom Diver catapults that we brought to the field. Finally, on either flank, we do have doubled up Forest Goblin Spider Riders, as well as a single unit of Orc Boar Boys. The Orc Boy Boys there to provide a little bit of extra oomph in support against units such as Wild Riders, which my opponent didn't bring here. On the other flank, we do have the same thing. We simply do have the Moonhowlers mixed in over there. Now, for my opponent, he did decide to go with a surprisingly melee-heavy build. Normally, it's not what I would recommend, guys, against the Greenskins, because they can bring Wa, and they can really dumpster this sort of stuff. But here, against this sort of build, it can potentially do well. If we look over my opponent's comp, it does involve a Tree Man, which is a little surprising. You don't see these guys very often, but they did get a buff with the new AP damage. And, of course, the guy is not a pushover in melee. He will trash somebody like Wardsag in a straight-up fight. He does, of course, have an AoE buff with Call of the Woods, great +5 melee attack, Awakening of the Wood, Earthblood, Shield of Thorns. He's got Foe Seeker, he's got Power Stone, and Blessing of the Ancients. Probably brought on accident because this map does not have trees, but hey, it doesn't really matter. It's not the most expensive item. But this guy will be buffing up this front line a whole bunch, making it much more potent. Otherwise, the front line here is composed mostly of Eternal Guard. We can see Winterheart Guard, some Eternal Guard. There are also some Treekin, Firebark Elders, as well as normal Treekin in there. Second line of some War Dancers, 2 units of them, and then 2 units of Glade Guard, providing a little bit of fire support. There are also 2 units of Deepwood Scouts, as well as some Sisters of the Thorn on the flank, and a single Great Eagle up in the sky looking to get some harassing. And here we are going to see some nastiness going down. You can see we are casting Vindictive Glare, and Smush smacks the Eagle. It doesn't even get a full connection, and if we look at the damage, the Eagle started off at 3,400 HP, and despite not taking a full Overcast hit, he is down something around 1,700 or so HP in a single volley from the Night Goblin Shaman. Perhaps a little bit less. Let's say it's 1,600 because some of it might have come in from Wardsag's Effigy, but still, ridiculous amounts of damage. Second burst is coming in. You can see Effigy whittling this guy down, and boom, down another 900 or so HP, and the Great Eagle shatters immediately. So, for 12 winds of magic, and of course we did use Wardsag there, but really we didn't have to. I simply wanted to guarantee this guy was off the field, and knew that my opponent didn't have too many other great targets for Vindictive Glare. But essentially, with 12 winds of magic, we removed a Great Eagle from play, which is pretty nuts. 800 gold removed for only 12 winds of magic. That takes no real skill to use. Unlike, for example, Amber Spear, which you have to perfectly line up, your opponent kind of has to not notice it, and there's a lot your opponent can do to avoid it. Not so much you can do with Vindictive Glare, especially when you're netted. In the meantime, though, my opponent is chipping away with some Deepwood Scouts here. He is chipping away a little bit with the Sisters of the Thorn, so you can see we have Posture or Orc Boys to try to absorb some of those shots. Now we're pushing forward with some Forest Goblin Spider Eyes to try to shut down this harass. Obviously, we don't want them fighting Sisters of the Thorn, but this way we are keeping the Deepwood Scouts running, and we are going to be able to barrage them a little bit with our Doom Divers. You can see they are taking some losses there, losing a few models here and there. Look at that, 4 kills to the Angry Gobos, and definitely getting some value. Anytime the front lines are about to meet, you can see the Orc Boys are going to clash with the War Dancers. You can see the spinning loons going through the Winterheart Guard, and although my opponent does get an Awakening of the Wood there, the main thing is the fight is going down in the front line, and Wa is being procced. Now, big mistake here. I really need to get these Orc Boys split, but instead they're getting a little bit bogged down and a little bit clumped up, which is not what we want. That said, though, the Doom Divers continuing to harass the Deepwood Scouts, and my cavalry is now buffed up. They are up to 97 speed on the Fire Spider Riders and 75 on the Orc Boys, which is not bad. And they're going to be able to get on these Deepwood Scouts and shut them down. Deepwood Scouts are pretty atrocious in melee. They're inferior to, say, Way Watchers by a lot, and they're going to get mulched pretty quickly. Unfortunately, there's a bit of friendly fire going in, but hopefully I do notice that. I do believe it's pretty shortly, and we change target. In the meantime, here in the front line, the Orc Boys are starting to buckle, but you can see a Vindictive Glare. They're slamming into the Tree Man and doing quite a bit of damage. And I'm hoping we get a second one. There we go. This guy was at 5,500 HP. And sure, there's been some fire from the Rusty Airs, but with Rusty Airs hitting this guy, dropping to 70 armor, he loses another 1,500 HP in an instant to this Night Goblin Shaman. And it's only 8 Winds of Magic. Keep in mind, you're never going to get, and let's be honest here, you are never going to get 1,500 damage out of something like, say, Spirit Leech against the Tree Man. It'll do like 700 damage, maybe. 1,500 for that same cost. Just devastating to the Tree Man. In the meantime, over here, my opponent actually plowed his Treekin through the back line. They are actually struggling a bit here against the Rusty Airs, which shows how bad Treekin are, honestly. Treekin are whomping on Rusty Airs, one of the worst melee units in the game, and they are not able to do very much. So, over here, we are going to pull Wartsag in. In the meantime, the Rusty Airs are set to... we're going to be kept on guard mode, so they keep pounding with the Ancient Tree Man. And in the meantime, in the back, you can see our cavalry is running amok. The Boar Boys, as well as the Forest Goblin Riders, getting rid of the Deepwood Scouts. Curse of Honor does go down from the Sisters, but too little too late. I do think the Sisters should have committed into melee here. They're actually not a bad melee unit. They might have been able to help those Deepwood Scouts a little bit, but too little too late. In the meantime, the Cavalry here does disengage, and you can see the Orc War Boys are going to swing wide, go after these annoying Treekin, and potentially free up these poor Rusty Airs who are just getting wailed on. But the Treekin really not getting much done. You can see another set of Vindictive Glares smash there and get your Tree Man, and now we are focusing with the Doom Divers, just pounding into him and whittling him down with some deadly Gobbo precision. And you can see he's down to 70 armor, so let's watch as these flyers go in there, and they're doing about 100 damage a pop, so they're definitely making him reconsider his life choices. And another Vindictive Glare, because I'm an absolute jerk this game, and we are going to get another Vindictive Glare on him. He does pop some. He does try to sort of waddle away there. I did try to pop Vindictive Glare. I think it might have gotten interrupted, or he got messed up somewhere in there, the casting. But regardless, the Doom Divers continue their pounding. Shield of Thorns has gone down, which makes him a little tankier, but really not enough. If we look at the rest of the battlefield, the Rusty Airs kind of bogged down. I really should have extricated them a little sooner. Just used Wartsag and the boys here to tie the trees down. But what can you do? Here in the front line, the AP Loonies are trading with the Winterheart Guard. They are losing, and they will lose. But you know what? It's an alright trade. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. In the meantime, the Tree Man is almost a goner. He's down to 1,100 HP. But unfortunately, he's going to get a tear out here on the Spiders, because that interrupted Vindictive Glare means that he has survived a little longer than we would have liked. But the harass is continuous. My opponent is not able to disrupt my backline. And so we're getting some good value there. The Night Goblin Shaman here is getting pounded down a little bit by the trees. But nonetheless, we are going to be able to fight our way clear. You can see one of Jet going down, getting us some Winds of Magic back. And in the meantime, Tree Boy over here does pop Earth Blood, but still, the damage is just continuous, and it is devastating. Elsewhere, Deepwood Scouts forced off. Now, these War Dancers here pretty badly whittled down. They're down to about 1,800 or so HP. We did try to get a charge in there with our Orc Boys, but Orc Boys not the best. These guys do have 34 melee defense. They only got 22 melee attacks, so unless they got their charge bonus going, they kind of suck. That said, we are pulling Orc Boys back into the fray. The Rusty Airs extricate themselves, and of course Wartsag and the Boar Squad here are going to be able to tear up these Treekin pretty efficiently in a long, drawn-out grind. Another Wa does go down, which is going to make this frontline fight even more advantageous for me. The Orc Boys suddenly are going to be able to mulch to this Eternal Guard much more effectively. In the meantime, this Ancient Tree Man really starts to succumb to that constant barrage of catapult fire, and he is definitely suffering. You can see the Eternal Guard there finally shatters. And although my opponent is doing his very best to try to shut me down, we do actually hit him with the Vindictive Glare there, and the tree topples to the ground there. So that is it for him. My opponent's Lord is suddenly gone, and things are looking grim. Now, certainly my opponent has gotten these Firebark Elders into my backline. Certainly he does still have a few units. He's got these Glade Guard over here. He does still have the Sisters. But by and large, my opponent's army at this point is ruined. He's got a few Deepwood Scouts over there, but really, I do still have a decent, healthy contingent of cavalry. We do still have a few Night Goblin Shamans. The Orc Boys are still in a some numbers everywhere. Wartsag is in there. We do still have Rusty Airs and quite a big blob of Orcs, and they are going to be able to start overwhelming this backline and really running things over. And you can see now the Doom Diver is able to shift fire onto the Sisters of the Thorn. Sisters are pretty tanky. They do have 50% physical resist, of course. I do believe it's still 50%. It didn't get... Oh, no, it got nerfed to 40%. I was about to say, I think it did get nerfed, but I wasn't sure. But at this point, army losses are going to kick in for my opponent, and you can see his army completely falls apart. The Wailing Fire just coming in still, but at this point, it's kind of pointless. At this point, we just do need to get rid of those Winter Guard, but my opponent GG's out before that happens. Now, this game, I think, demonstrates how ridiculous Vindictive Glare can be right now. I'm not going to say it was a perfect game from either of us. My opponent definitely got a bit greedy with the Eagle, but that does come from the fact that Greenskins do not have very... And this is part of the reason why Vindictive Glare is kind of important, and I do think it can't be nerfed too much. It is an important option for the Greenskins to defend against air spam, especially air spam on things like Eagles, for example, against Alariel or Glades on Eagles, just chipping away at you. So I do think it's important from that perspective, but at the same time, it does some nasty things. My opponent, sure, he was a bit cheeky and greedy with the Eagle there, but really, my Shamans, they were stalked. I only paid 12 wins of magic for it, and I was able to nuke his Eagle almost entirely and instantly shatter it. So, really some brutal stuff. And it does similar damage to basically any other large low armor flyer. Eagles, honestly, I would expect Force Dragons to suffer pretty badly against it. Against Lords on Pegasus, it is ridiculous, especially against heroes or like casters like Balthasar, for example, or Empire casters on Pegasus, or like a wizard on a horse. It's really, really brutal. There is actually a cool clip, I think, on Lotus Moon's Twitch channel where he uses it right off the bat in like the first 10 seconds of the game, and just boom, instantly kills or almost kills. He like instantly shatters or routes off the enemy Fire Wizard or the enemy Bright Wizard, and it was literally in like the first 10 seconds of the game, and it is ridiculous. And that is what Vindictive Glare could do right now, and I really do think this match demonstrated it. It also showed how against a Tree Man, 70 armor, okay, with armor sundering, it still did 1500 damage. It does ridiculous hurt. It is really potent. I think that was with both casts, but still, that was ridiculous. Just how much damage you get for relatively low investment. I think no, that was actually, I think, just a single cast, so it was just a crazy amount of value netted for relatively low effort. And do keep in mind, you can pull off similar stuff against like dragons, for example. Like if it's a dragon giving you trouble, you hit him with like Rusty Airs, or you hit him with like an armor debuff. If you bring Azag, for example, you can hit him with an armor debuff, and then boom, smash him with some Vindictive Glare. If your opponent has a Sun Dragon or like one of the cheaper dragons, Walmart dragons, you hit him with a wombo combo of Vindictive Glare and armor drop of some sort. Boom, done. You've probably lost like half your dragon instantly. I think it's the potential damage. I think is like 4,000 damage on 2 Overcast Vindictive Glares. And keep in mind, like I said at the beginning of the match, these guys are costing like 256 if you just bring Vindictive Glare. If you go a little more heavily kitted out, like what I did, sure, it's cost a little more, but really, it's still a budget choice. So potent. Otherwise, for this build, honestly, I do think this is not a bad build against Wood Elves. You've got a lot of Orc Boys to just soak up arrows and slug it out with cheaper Wood Elf infantry. You've got your Spider Riders to deal with enemy backlines, to deal with Wild Riders with the help of Wa, and to do with that sort of stuff. The Boar Boys give you a little bit of potential. If you need to deal with Shriekin or, say, heavily armored troops, they do give you a little bit of stopping power there. And the Doom Divers give you some continuous pressure on the backline, so I just like that build. As for my opponent's build, I do think it is not necessarily the most optimal. Personally, I do think Wild Riders are really good against Greenskins still, even with Walroided Forest Goblins. They'll still do really well. The only Greenskin unit that's resistant to Wild Riders really is Black Orcs, so it's, and I guess the Ragnarok Spider. So by and large, it's they're a pretty potent choice in this matchup. So I think that doing like, I don't really think trying to match the Greenskins in 1v1 is really all that great. I think you're better off trying to go in with Wild Riders and some kiting, some Deepwood Scouts, maybe some obviously some Way Watchers, probably do some sniping and try to work with that. I think is a better idea. Otherwise, there are other builds. Yeah, you guys have probably seen some of my ridiculous Hawk Rider builds and whatnot, but I do think that trying to match the Greenskins in a tit-for-tat fight, especially as a squishy faction like What Else, is just not the way to go. But regardless, I do hope you guys are now aware of how badly you can abuse Vindictive Glare, and also aware that if you're facing off against Greenskins, be wary. Do not just YOLO in within 250 meters with a Eagle if you're not sure that if there is or is not a shaman around, especially if Wurzag is on foot, because Wurzag can quickly lock you in place and then you're going to get nuked. Be extra wary if you're running a Lariel or something of that nature, because you're going to be real squishy and it's a really hefty investment there that can get shut down for dirt cheap. So just be aware. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you found it informative and entertaining, if you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, if you don't think Vindictive Layers is overpowered, if you think it, if you think there's certain tweaks it should have or whatever, be sure to post them down in the comments. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on the matter. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.